So, for those of you who don't know you, how exactly did you get started in the industry before? And how did you really get into sovereign brands and just the spirit industry and such, into the whole alcohol lines of such? Like, how did it really start for you from the beginning? Take me from the overall, whether it was you were 18, started with a dream and came about one day, whether it showed up later when you were like 40 or such and such. How did it all come about?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is I was the kid who had tons of ideas and never picked one. And that's where you get really lost because if you don't pick something, you're lost. You don't focus on anything. And my fear was every time if I would pick one, maybe it was the wrong one and I'm wasting my time. And it wasn't until my 30s where I said, I gotta stop this shit. I gotta focus on one thing and I gotta give it my all. And I picked the liquor industry. My dad was in the liquor industry. I wanted to be just like him. He didn't like me choosing this industry because I think, like I'm learning as any parent, you want your kids to do something easier than you had. And yeah, that was 20 years ago. And what's crazy is I've never looked back. I'm loving it. I don't want to stop. I love what I'm doing. I love our industry. I still have lots of ideas, so that never went away, but at least I'm very focused, I think that's the key to success is being focused.
What about the industry gravitated you towards it? That was really something that made you really choose that this is what I want to do. Because, like you said, having all these multifaceted ideas, you could have gone a lot of different avenues and lanes. But what about the liquor industry stood out the most where you were like, this is the one, this is what I'm going with?
I've always loved consumer brands. I love the branding side. I love the fact that, take me as the consumer. I take ownership in the brands. I want to feel like a brand is part of me, and it's always been like that. And I think at the same time, there was that and a combination of I want to do something on my own. I want it to be mine. And if I can combine the two. And then I chose liquor, not because I had any expertise in it, which I didn't, but I think that's been my superpower. I think sometimes when you're too close to something, you miss it. You don't see it because you're too involved in it. And because I was never in the industry, I saw it from an outsider's perspective, and I continue to look at it from an outsider's perspective. And I think that's what's given us our advantage.
Now, you speak about having advantages and how what you've done differently with sovereign brands. And of course, we all know that the huge names it owns from Bel Air, McQueen and the Violet Frog, formerly Ace of Spades. How exactly do you choose to navigate yourself differently compared to these other liquor licensed brands and such and such? How do you go about your strategies different from others?
I think it's by this mistakes I made. So one of the biggest mistakes I made early on was I thought I needed to be like everybody else. I need to do what the Diageos and the Bacardis and the Jack Daniels do. I need to be just like them. And what I realize is I can't. I can't compete with them. I can't do things the way they do. They do it. And I have to pick the lane I've chosen is do what feels comfortable for me. Do what feels organic to me. Do what makes me feel proud to be involved in it. So whether that's music, whether that's going global, whether it's the brands I'm competing in, it's got to fit me. I can't fake this shit. It's got to be either I'm all in or
Absolutely.
I'm not going to do it.
Now, just to touch on that, what exactly were they doing that you were trying to replicate and do? What exactly was it that these brands were doing that you were like, I need to try to do it exactly like this in order to be successful per se?
Events, parties, promotions, the people we hired, the kind of people we hired. Uh, the interesting way to look at it is I I don't think I could step in the role of a big giant company um, and do what they do. Just as much as they could never step into my shoes and do what I do. I think I've realized that being on the ground, being really low to the ground, meaning no, touching everything, is the way brands are built. And I'm not. I think it's grassroots. It's old school. I believe in old school brand building. That's how we do it.
When it comes down to achievements and milestones that you've done throughout your career and what you've done with your sovereign brands in general, is there any specific pivotal moments where you felt that it was a huge achievement for you to feel that you've succeeded specifically, or do you kind of try to just keep pushing the narrative of we're going to keep going and making sure we're still making steps to furthering our success?
I would say everything has always happened based on the mistakes I've made in the past. And to give you an example, I think in the early days, I thought things should happen fast. It should be easy. It should be quick. Success should happen overnight. And that's just not the way it works. And I realized this. I realized it's the hard way. It's not supposed to be like this. And once I accepted this, once I realized, to me, success was, if I can make a living at this, I'm done. I'm happy. Nothing else needs to happen. And that's what's great, what I appreciate the most today. So the way I describe success is, if an account is happy with my brand, I'm on my way. If someone likes my brand, I'm on my way. That's it. And the key is, keep adding more accounts, keep adding more believers, and you start building a movement. That's what, to me, success is, because you can't force something to happen faster than it should. If I have something that happens, organically, that makes a big impact, I got to take advantage of it, but I can't force something to happen faster than it should. So it's all about lots of little successes adding up.
So speaking on that, having that success and to see where you're at now, and that's an amazing also piece, by the way, about those certain keys. I know there's a lot of people that try to say, if you want to be successful, wake up at 3 a.m. or go to the gym and such. It's really not. Everyone has a different format and method. There's no clear-cut method unless you're doing something that no one's ever done before specifically. But speaking of your success lately, we've seen now the market get more and more competitive, and one of the ways that you've been able to combat that is by working with major artists, such as you've worked with Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, such and such, more and more, who you've been able to speak with. Tell us about recently what exactly you choose when it comes down to hip hop. What about hip hop is it gravitates you towards choosing that specific connection with your brand?
I think it gets back to, it's organic. It's natural to me. It's something that I love and appreciate. The way I would describe myself as a fan of music is, yes, I like the music, but I'm a bigger fan of the artists, because they all have this struggle story. They all have this hardship that they went through. And I get off. I love hearing shit that people went through, all the bad stuff that they went through, because that to me is motivating. And I think hip hop is geared towards that. I think hip hop has a story to tell. So to me, it's like, it's my example before. I was saying I can't be like the Bacardis of the world. If my lane was country music, that's what I should be supporting. But that's not my lane. My lane is hip hop. I like that, and I'm supporting it. And then what's happened is I continue to lean in on it, and it's taken me to new places I never would have thought about. So Africa now in music, the Balkans in music, local artists in other country in music. So to me, it's always about this leaning in to what feels right. And if it feels right, I'm doing the right thing because it's natural to me. It's an extension of who we are.
And with that said about how you've been traveling to new places, because hip hop is now the most global art style that it can't even be competed with now. It's truly just touching all different places and influencing all different areas from the UK, Africa, anywhere that you're at, you're going to have a hip hop variant of some kind of genre. Now, when it came down to, you had a recent trip to Europe, I believe, and you've been promoting your brands. How exactly was it? What's some new things that you were able to experience? Some new things you were able to, any takeaways, any pivotal moments that you had while you were overseas just traveling such and such?
I think two things. I think one, and I get asked this question all the time, and people always say there's a difference in my country versus another country. I don't believe it. When it comes to my brands, I don't believe it. I believe that luxury brands, high-end premium brands, whether it's an alcohol, watches, clothing, cars, we all want what we consider to be cool and great brands. That's global. It does not matter what market, what country, what city, what state. I believe in that. The other thing I believe in, which again hits home all the time, is I treat all markets the same. If it's a big country, that's irrelevant to me. Bulgaria, Macedonia, Croatia, Slovenia, I treat them just as important as the US or Canada or UK, and if not more important, because I think those markets are just as much trendsetters as the US is.
Oh, absolutely.
They're appreciative of brands. I think that localness matters hugely to brands. So as big Rick Ross is in the United States. If I go to Latvia, they've got their own artists. They've got their own celebrity, their own local player who plays an influential role. And what I love is we can bring them into our network and then get our big guys to support them. So it's all about creating this global network, specifically in music. That's what I lean into. That's what I enjoy.
And to speak on that further, one of your big plans that you got right now is just expanding your brand as much as you can, getting global, getting bigger, and also utilizing music with that. And you've teamed up with Ross now to create an album with a lot of African music-based artists from the top tiers that I know that we're gonna have, from Diamond Platinums and so and such and such. What exactly came about the idea to make this album exactly? Like, because this is another thing, like you've said, nobody does this. I don't know a Bacardi album. I don't know any Ciroc albums of any sort. I only probably have ever heard of this idea from you or yourself. How exactly did this compose and come about exactly?
It's natural. We don't have firms pitching us ideas. Our ideas come from kind of what we lean into. And I started a series a few years ago called Self-Made, where I interview celebrities, business people, musicians, always about hearing about the shit that they went through to get there. And I started moving this to Africa as an example. And the artists in Africa are so dope, and Afrobeats and Amapiano and what they're producing. And that's getting global. That is happening. And to me, it's about, well, I started thinking about it from a perspective of, God, these guys are so talented. They need a platform. If I can help be a platform to share and get big artists through our network to support these other artists, something's good's going to come from this. And it started out with, we started collaborating. We started getting Diamond to do songs with people, Yemi to do songs with people, different artists to work together. And now it's expanded to, I want to produce an album, and that's what's happening. We're not going to make any money off this. It's not about that. We're picking both big names like Diamond or Yemi, or up and coming names like Nasty C, Stone.
Got Ice Prince in there, Techno.
Black Bones,
Yeah.
Vocalistic was huge, up and coming producers, up and coming artists. And Ross wants to be the mouthpiece to help promote them. And now we've got other artists on board. Wiz is on a song, Wyclif's on a song. So it's all about trying to shine a light on African artists, but make it global. And that's the goal here. And we're having some fun doing it. So we got over probably close to 30 songs already, which is amazing. And we're going to promote the shit out of it so we can shine a light on all these people.
No, it's amazing. That's dope. And high praise to you being a trailblazer doing this, because this is probably what most businesses would say is a risk to go to this route, because we are obviously see how just Afrobeats has taken over the overall just 2024 and 2023 and such and such. And I think it's going to only push the narrative and the gap further more and more. So major props to you overall of how you've gone about this. And do you consider yourself, when it comes down to this, more of like a risk taker when it comes to business, or do you feel that you need to have a specific level of comfort before making a decision or a business move in this kind of case? Or are you more like, you know what, if we lose, we lose, we'll learn from the mistakes, kind of similar to like you said before?
It's the latter. You got to try shit. I tell my team all the time, you got to try stuff. My brother has a saying, he tells people all the time, what'll get you fired somewhere else will get you hired by us. Everything to me is, you're going to learn something from it. It's either going to work or it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, the key is don't justify it. Don't justify what happened to make it positive. Rip it apart, do an autopsy on it, figure out what didn't work so you can learn and figure out again. I have lots of sayings, and one of my sayings is, sometimes not having a plan is a great plan. And the reason I say that is, you got to constantly pivot, especially in today's cycle of business where there's new things, new opportunities, new way to promote, new way to do things. And if you stick to the same idea for too long, you just wasted so much time and energy and money in it. You gotta pivot and pivot constantly, and that's what we try to do.
And speaking to how you're saying pivoting is one of the big things you really try to focus on, do you feel that, if you can't speak too further into this, because I don't know the exact plans that you've got going on, but is there any different avenues or different lanes of business that you eventually want to take into consideration of exploring further down the line, whether this album might become a record label one day, or let's just say the liquor might become, let's say we're going to go into more food-based areas, like, or what exactly would you consider into that case?
It's what comes, and we'll figure it out as we go. The one thing I have learned is this is the mistake I think a lot of people make, and I was one of those people. If you're not all in on something, you're not going to be good at it. You're not, and the key is once you're all in and you spend all your time learning about an industry, if you got to pivot to another industry that's completely different, you're starting all over. And I don't want to start all over again. I want to leverage what we're doing and what we're learning. And if I can make it, if it feels natural to me, that's what I want to do. So, you mentioned all the artists we work with, whether it's Wayne or Khaled or anybody we worked with in the past. All those people, what they have in common is they were fans of the brands. So to me, it's another example of, and I think it's the mistake people make, is they're chasing numbers. They're chasing somebody who's hot. They're chasing something that's going on currently. And I think that's a mistake. You got to find people who really love what you're doing and want to be involved with what you're doing based on the brand. Because if it's just based on a transaction, it doesn't feel right. You can't believe it, and it's going to end. And
It's a minimal win.
Exactly. Well. Exactly. My goal is to make it last. It's like marriage. You don't jump in, you date first.
Yeah.
And then once you're married, it gets better and better as long as you're committed to that person and it doesn't go away. I don't want it to end.
No, true. Like, honestly, just make it as happy as long as you can. Like, it's what we live in for happily ever afters. So I have to ask you to be biased because obviously I know truly that you're not going to touch any liquor other than your own, of course. You're not going to be seen with anyone else's but your own. Obviously, like doing that is basically cheating on your wife, speaking of marriage, to have another bottle in your hand that's not owned by you. When it comes down to your liquor, specifically, if you could make a Mount Rushmore of it could be from any different of the brands at all. Obviously, choose whatever at all what you want to go with. What would be your 4 from your lines, the specific flavors of such and such? If you could also clarify specifically, as we can market this too, so people will also know, what do you like to drink of your own? What would you say are your 4 go-tos when it comes down to the liquors that you sell and own?
Yeah, I got to go with the current portfolio, meaning my current brands. I've got 2 wonderful brands from my past, but the current ones, there's no question, it's Bel Air. It's the preeminent bubbles. This is the shit that you hold in your hand, and this is your trophy. This is the thing that I did it. I created success. I'm going to show it off. Bel Air is number 1. Bamboo would be number 2. So proud of this little brand because if you looked at based on data, Ethan, this brand shouldn't exist. Bamboo continues to teach me I don't want to do anything where if it's in a category that's hot. If it's hot and I'm not in it, it's too late. I want to pick categories that are not hot, that's not trending because I want to make the trend. So Bamboo would be number 2 and it's a huge success. Number 3 would be McQueen and the Violet Fog. It has to be. Our little gin from Jundiaí, Brazil. Tastes like nothing else, acts like nothing else. I think it's the best tasting gin in the world. Number 4 would be Vion, our liqueur that competes in the cognac category. Nothing else like it in the world in taste profile. And finally, the youngest, which is the newest, is the Deacon. The Deacon is the best tasting whiskey in the world.
You're our first.
Against anybody at all. It's already in 60 countries in its first year. It's a really cool brand. And those would be there's only 4 on Mount Rushmore, but I added a 5th.
No, it's fair. I respect it. Honestly, we're going to take the 5 either way. They're all good options, all good choices by all means. So from the mouth first itself, like now we all know what we should be buying, what we're going to be drinking, what we're going to celebrate with.
Love it.
So with that being said, other than that, appreciate your time. It was honestly a great honor speaking with you, Brett. I honestly appreciate any time getting the opportunity to talk to someone as great as you are. I wish nothing but success with this brand that you've got going on. To the album, nothing but success too. We were all going to stream this, of course, too. And just an honor to you for what you've done and everything since from there.
Thank you, Ethan. Really appreciate the time. Great questions.
Of course. Thank you.